Rejected for her curves, one night the cowboy couldn't walk away. The small town of Red Willow sat quietly between wide fields and dusty roads. Life there moved slowly, and people followed the same routines every day. Everyone knew everyone, and nothing stayed a secret for long. But while the town looked peaceful from the outside, it was not always kind to those who were different. Clara Bennett had lived in Red Willow her whole life. She knew every street, every shop, and every face. But no matter how long she had lived there, she never truly felt like she belonged. Clara was not like the other women in town. She had soft curves and a strong presence that made her stand out. Instead of being admired, she was often judged. People would whisper when she walked by. Some would give her quick looks and then turn away. Others would smile politely but never invite her to join them. Over time, Clara learned to stay quiet. She kept her head high, but her heart carried the weight of many silent hurts. That evening, the town was buzzing with excitement. The annual social gathering was being held at the town hall. It was the biggest event of the year, where everyone dressed their best, danced, and shared laughter. For many, it was a night of joy. For Clara, it was something else. She stood in front of her small mirror, adjusting her dress. It was simple, but neat. She had spent extra time getting ready, hoping, just once, that things might be different. "Maybe tonight will be better," she whispered to herself. Taking a deep breath, she stepped outside and walked toward the town hall. Inside, the room was full of light and music. People were laughing, talking, and dancing together. Clara paused at the door for a moment, watching. She wanted to feel part of it, just like everyone else. She walked in slowly, offering a small smile to those she passed. Some returned it, but most quickly looked away. Clara tried to join a group of women she had known for years. They greeted her politely, but their conversations soon faded, and she found herself standing alone again. She moved toward the edge of the room, hoping to stay unnoticed. After some time, a man approached her. He smiled and asked if she would like to dance. For a moment, Clara felt a spark of hope. She nodded gently and stepped onto the floor with him. But the moment did not last. As they began to dance, Clara noticed his smile fade slightly. His eyes shifted around the room as if he was worried about being seen. After only a short while, he cleared his throat and stepped back. I'm sorry," he said awkwardly. "I need to go." Clara stood there, confused, as he walked away without another word. The music continued, and the room remained full of laughter. But for Clara, everything felt quiet. The small hope she had carried into the night slowly disappeared. She walked out of the hall before anyone could notice the sadness in her eyes. Outside, the air was cool and still. The stars shone brightly above, but Clara did not look up. She walked slowly down the empty street, her footsteps soft against the ground. At the same time, a lone cowboy rode into town. Luke Callahan had been traveling for many days. Dust covered his boots, and his hat sat low over his eyes. He was used to long roads and quiet nights. Towns came and went, and he never stayed too long in one place. As he guided his horse down the main street, he noticed the lights and music coming from the town hall. He also noticed something else: a woman walking alone. Clara moved past him without looking up, lost in her thoughts. But Luke noticed her right away. There was something about her, something calm yet strong. Even in her quiet walk, he could sense that she carried more than what others saw. He slowed his horse slightly and watched her for a moment. Clara did not see him. She kept walking until she reached her small home at the edge of town. Once inside, she closed the door gently and leaned against it. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel everything she had been holding back. Then, slowly, she straightened her shoulders. "This is how it is," she said softly, "and I will be okay." Back on the street, Luke looked toward the house where Clara had gone. He didn't know her name, and he didn't know her story. but he felt something unusual, a quiet pull he couldn't explain. He had planned to pass through Red Willow like any other town, but as he rode toward the stable, he couldn't shake the feeling that this place and that woman were somehow different. And for the first time in a long while, Luke Callahan wondered if he might stay a little longer. The morning in Red Willow began like any other. The sun rose slowly over the fields, and the town came to life with the usual sounds: horses moving, shop doors opening, and people greeting each other in the streets. Clara Bennett woke up early, as she always did. She did not want to think about the night before, but the memory stayed in her mind. Still, she pushed those thoughts aside. She had learned long ago that life did not stop for hurt feelings. She tied her hair back, wore a simple dress, and stepped outside. The cool morning air helped her feel a little lighter. "I will just focus on today," she told herself quietly. Meanwhile, Luke Callahan stood outside the small stable, brushing down his horse. He had slept in a modest room nearby, planning to leave after a short rest. But something had changed. He looked toward the town, thinking. "That woman," he said under his breath. He did not know why, but he kept remembering her quiet walk from the night before. There had been something in her expression, not weakness, but strength hidden under silence. Luke was not the kind of man who stayed in one place, yet instead of preparing to leave, he found himself walking toward the center of town. The general store was already open. It was the busiest place in Red Willow, where people gathered not only to buy things, but also to talk and share news. Clara entered the store a few minutes later. She carried a small basket and kept her eyes low, hoping for a quick visit without drawing attention. As she moved through the shelves, she picked up what she needed: flour, tea, and a few other simple items. She was used to doing everything quietly, without expecting help or conversation. At the same time, Luke stepped inside. The bell above the door rang softly, and for a moment, Clara looked up. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away again. Luke recognized her instantly. He walked over calmly, not wanting to startle her. "Morning," he said in a friendly tone. Clara paused, slightly surprised. Most people did not greet her so openly. "Morning," she replied softly. There was a small silence between them, but it did not feel uncomfortable. "You from around here?" Luke asked. Clara nodded. "Yes, I've lived here all my life." Luke smiled a little. "Then you know this place better than I ever will." Clara glanced at him, noticing his calm and respectful way of speaking. "You're new," she said. "Just passing through," he replied. Then, after a moment, he added, "At least, that was the plan." Clara did not respond right away. She was not used to people talking to her this long. Still, there was something different about him. He did not look at her with judgment or hesitation. They walked slowly through the store as they spoke. Luke picked up a few supplies, but seemed more interested in the conversation. "It's a quiet town," he said. Clara gave a small smile. "Yes, it is." She did not say more, but Luke could sense that there was more behind her words. Just then, a couple of townspeople nearby glanced at them. Their whispers were quiet, but noticeable. Clara felt it immediately. Her shoulders tightened slightly. She stepped back a little. "I should go," she said quickly. Luke noticed the change in her expression. "You don't have to rush," he said gently. Clara shook her head. "It's all right. I have things to do." She moved toward the counter, trying to ignore the feeling she knew too well, the sense of being watched and judged. Luke stood still for a moment, then followed at a distance. When Clara finished paying, she turned to leave, but before she could step outside, Luke spoke again. "Miss, I didn't catch your name." Clara hesitated. People rarely asked. "Clara," she said. "Clara," Luke repeated with a small nod. "I'm Luke." She gave a slight nod in return. For a brief second, neither of them moved. "Take care," Clara said quietly. "You too," Luke replied. She stepped outside into the sunlight and walked down the street. Luke watched her go, thinking. There was something about her that stayed with him. Not just her quiet nature, but the way she carried herself. She seemed used to being overlooked, yet she still moved with dignity. Outside, Clara walked a little faster than usual. Her heart was beating slightly faster, but not from fear. It was something else. She had spoken to someone, and it felt different. No cold looks, no awkward silence, no quick ending, just simple, honest words. She slowed down after a while. "That was strange," she said softly. But for the first time in a long time, the feeling in her chest was not heavy. Back in the store, Luke finished his purchase but remained thoughtful. He stepped outside and looked down the road where Clara had gone. "This town," he said quietly, "might not be so simple after all." He adjusted his hat and took a slow breath. He still planned to leave, but not just yet. The days in Red Willow passed slowly, just as they always did. But for Clara Bennett, something had quietly begun to change. She still followed her daily routine, waking early, finishing her chores, and keeping to herself, but her thoughts were no longer the same. Every now and then, she found herself remembering the conversation at the general store. Luke. It was strange how a simple meeting could stay in her mind for so long. Meanwhile, Luke Callahan had not left town. At first, he told himself he was only staying to rest a little longer. His horse needed it, and the road ahead was long. But deep down, he knew that was not the full reason. Each morning, he found himself walking through town, almost as if he was searching for something, or someone. On the third day, he saw Clara again. She was near the stable, carrying a small bucket of water. The sunlight fell softly around her, and she moved with quiet focus. She did not notice him at first. Luke approached slowly. "Morning, Clara," he said. She turned, slightly surprised, but not uncomfortable this time. "Morning," she replied. There was a small pause, but it felt easier than before. "Need a hand?" Luke asked, nodding toward the bucket. Clara hesitated. She was used to doing things on her own. "It's all right," she said at first, but Luke did not step away. He simply waited, calm and patient. After a moment, Clara gave a small nod. "All right, thank you." Luke took the bucket and walked beside her. They moved toward the stable in comfortable silence. "You come here often?" he asked. Clara nodded. "Yes, I help sometimes. It keeps me busy." Luke smiled slightly. "Nothing wrong with that." They placed the bucket down, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. But the silence did not feel heavy anymore. As the day went on, Luke stayed nearby, helping with small tasks, fixing a loose fence, carrying supplies, and checking on the horses. Clara noticed, but she did not question it. For the first time, she did not feel alone while working. But not everyone in Red Willow was pleased. A few townspeople began to notice how often Luke was around Clara. Their looks grew sharper, their whispers louder. Some shook their heads, while others exchanged quiet comments. Clara felt it. That familiar feeling returned, the one that made her want to step back and disappear. Later that afternoon, as she walked through the main street with Luke, two women standing nearby glanced at them and began whispering. Clara caught a few words, and her expression changed. She slowed her steps. "You don't have to walk with me," she said quietly. Luke looked at her, confused. "Why not?" Clara kept her eyes ahead. "People are talking." Luke glanced around, noticing the looks. "Let them talk," he said calmly. Clara shook her head. "It's easy for you to say. You won't be here long." Those words hung in the air. Luke stopped walking. "What makes you so sure?" he asked. Clara turned slightly, her voice soft but honest. "Because no one ever stays." There was no anger in her tone, only quiet truth. Luke studied her face for a moment. He could see the doubt she carried, the walls she had built over time. "I'm still here," he said. Clara looked at him, unsure how to respond. Before she could say anything, one of the men from town approached them. "Hey," the man said to Luke. "You're new here, right?" Luke nodded. "That's right." The man glanced at Clara briefly before looking back at Luke. "There's plenty of folks around here to spend your time with," he said. "You don't have to settle for less." The words were clear, even if they were spoken quietly. Clara lowered her gaze, her hands tightening slightly. But Luke did not look away. He stepped forward just enough to make his answer clear. "I decide where I spend my time," he said calmly, "and who I stand beside." The man seemed surprised. He gave a small shrug and walked away without another word. The street grew quiet again. Clara stood still, unsure what to say. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. "Yes, I did," Luke replied. She looked at him, searching his expression. "Why?" she asked. Luke took a slow breath. "Because people don't get to decide someone's worth," he said. "Not here. Not anywhere." Clara felt something shift inside her. She was not used to hearing words like that, at least not directed toward her. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. "Thank you," she whispered. Luke gave a small nod. "You don't have to thank me." They began walking again, this time a little slower. As the sun started to set, the town of Red Willow looked the same as always. But for Clara, something felt different. She was still the same person. The town was still the same. But now, someone had chosen to stand beside her, without hesitation. And that small change felt bigger than anything she had known before. The sky over Red Willow turned soft shades of orange and gold as the sun began to set. The town looked peaceful, just as it always did. But for Clara Bennett, this evening felt different from all the others before it. She stood near the edge of town, where the land opened into wide fields. It was her quiet place, the one spot where she could think without feeling watched. Clara held her shawl close as a gentle breeze passed by. Her mind was full of thoughts. The past few days had been unlike anything she had known before. Luke had stayed. He had walked beside her, spoken kindly, and stood up for her without hesitation. No one had ever done that before. Still, a part of her felt unsure. "Why would he stay?" she whispered to herself. Not long after, she heard soft footsteps behind her. "Thought I might find you here," Luke's voice said calmly. Clara turned around. She wasn't surprised to see him, but her heart still skipped slightly. "I come here sometimes," she said. Luke nodded and stepped closer, keeping a respectful distance. "It's quiet," he said. "Yes," Clara replied softly. "That's why I like it." For a moment, they both looked out at the open land. The silence between them felt calm, not heavy. Luke adjusted his hat slightly, as if gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking," he said. Clara looked at him, waiting. "I was supposed to leave this morning," he continued. "That was always the plan." Clara felt a small tightening in her chest, but she kept her expression steady. "I figured," she said. Luke glanced at her, noticing how she tried to hide her feelings. "But I didn't leave," he added. Clara looked up again, this time with a hint of surprise. "No," she said quietly. "You didn't." Luke took a slow breath. "I've spent a long time moving from one place to another," he said. "Never staying too long. It was easier that way." He paused for a moment, then continued. "But this time, it feels different." Clara stayed silent, listening carefully. "I met you," Luke said simply, "and I saw something I don't usually see. Someone strong, even when the world isn't kind." Clara lowered her eyes slightly. She wasn't used to hearing such words about herself. "You don't really know me," she said gently. Luke shook his head. "Maybe not everything, but I know enough." There was honesty in his voice, calm and steady. "I know you don't let this town break you," he continued, "even when it tries." Clara felt her chest tighten again, but this time it was different. It wasn't pain, it was something softer. "I've had to learn that," she said. Luke nodded. "I can see that." The wind moved gently around them, carrying the quiet sounds of the evening. Clara looked at him, her voice softer now. "You'll leave soon," she said. "That's what people like you do." There was no blame in her tone, only quiet expectation. Luke met her gaze. "I could," he said. That answer made Clara look away again. "But I don't want to," he added. She looked back at him quickly, surprised. "I want to stay," Luke said. The words hung in the air, simple but powerful. Clara searched his face, trying to understand. "Why?" she asked. Luke smiled slightly, not in a big way, but in a calm, sure way. "Because for the first time in a long while," he said, "I found something worth staying for." Clara's heart beat faster. She didn't know what to say. "You deserve better than what this town has given you," Luke continued, "and I'm not walking away from that." Clara took a small step back, not out of fear, but because the moment felt too big. "I don't want you to stay because of me," she said. "What if things don't stay the same?" Luke nodded, understanding her doubt. "Things don't have to be perfect," he said. "They just have to be real." Clara stood still, thinking. For so long she had protected herself from disappointment. She had learned not to expect too much, not to hope too strongly. But now, standing there, something inside her began to shift. "You're sure?" she asked quietly. Luke gave a small, certain nod. "I am." Clara looked out at the open land again. The sun was almost gone now, leaving behind a soft glow in the sky. She took a deep breath. Then, slowly, she turned back to him. "I'm not used to this," she admitted. "That's all right," Luke said gently. Clara gave a small smile, the kind that came from deep within, not forced or hidden. "Then maybe we can figure it out," she said. Luke smiled back, just as quietly. "I'd like that." As the evening settled into night, the two of them stood side by side, not saying much, but understanding more than words could explain. The next morning, Red Willow looked the same as it always had. The streets, the shops, the people, nothing had changed on the outside. But Clara walked through the town differently. Her steps were steady. Her head was held high, not because the town had changed, but because she had. And beside her walked a cowboy who had made a choice, not to leave, but to stay.